This isn't the first time Yuki has taken Liam's seat.
Yeah, thanks.
I truly wish Yuki the best, because this is one of the most difficult situations any driver can be thrown into. First of all, Red Bull didn't even want my guy in the first place. Last year, when they were debating who would replace Sergio Perez, Yuki told the media, "I don't know what's going on. Please could you interview them to find out?" Like bro, these guys were just airing him all this time, to the point where he had to resort to getting information through the media about where he stands. Marco's reasons for not considering him as a potential option at the time was he, quote, lacks the continuity and stability required to fight at the front of the grid. He also stated that Tsunoda has too many outbursts of anger, but Lawson on the other hand is mentally stronger. It's honestly quite embarrassing how Marco was trying to find every excuse in the book not to sign Yuki and to justify why Liam was the better choice. I mean, it clearly wasn't for performance reasons. Even though Lawson did measure up pretty well against his teammate, who had a lot more experience, the fact of the matter is, Tsunoda was the better driver and had the better performances. Furthermore, this just comes back to their original problem of signing vastly inexperienced drivers, throwing them into a pressure cooker environment and expecting them to perform straight away. One of Helmut's goals with Lawson was for him to be within 3/10 of Verstappen in qualifying, and it surely couldn't get any worse than Perez. Well, that aged about as badly as Wayne Rooney. No way bro's younger than Ronaldo. This entire saga is just one big mess. Red Bull are now stuck with a driver they never even wanted in the first place, but since they were wrong about Lawson, they now have to eat their own dog food. Thing is, dropping Liam after only 2 races is incredibly harsh. Like you say, we have a duty of care to protect and develop Liam, but then drop him faster than a sprinter out the blocks. If you really cared, then why didn't you properly prepare your young driver? Mercedes gave Antonelli well over 10,000 kilometers worth of testing, and look at how well he's performed to start the season. I never thought I'd see the day someone get demoted faster than Liz Truss, but here we are. Having said that though, when you're consistently qualifying dead last and not even coming close to scoring any points, something has to change, or else nothing will. They thought Lawson could just hop into the Red Bull and perform straight away based on the adaptability he showed in other categories. Which I must say, some of the performances he put together in Super Formula were very impressive. But the Red Bull second seed is a whole different ballgame. And even for someone as adaptable as Liam, it was too much for him. The big question now is, will Yuki be any better? Well, I sincerely hope so. Last year after the final race in Abu Dhabi, Tsunoda had a go in the RB20, a car that was also very tricky to drive. And after the postseason test, this is what he had to say.
Is it a car that suits your driving style in general?
I think so. To be honest, I didn't really struggle much to adapt. Even long run, I'm able to drive quite consistent, and I straight away felt the limitations of the car, which is, if you don't have confidence in the car, you can't feel any limitations. So
now, one would probably argue that he was just saying this to better his chances of getting the Red Bull seat over Liam, and it's not ridiculous to say that. But then to further back up Yuki's case, Red Bull's head of performance said his feedback during the test was excellent. However, what I find with listening to quotes from the media is that they could just be capping, or at the very least, not telling us the full story. Unless you're actually part of the team, poring over the data and working with the drivers, nobody knows exactly how well Yuki did during that test, and whether it translates to him doing well in this year's RB21. And given he didn't take part in preseason testing with Red Bull, he's going to have to settle in straight away and be expected to deliver results, which is like trying to swim up a waterfall. Luckily, the Japanese Grand Prix will be a regular weekend with 3 practice sessions. That's when he'll need to really maximize every minute so he can adjust to the new car and the new environment. At VCARB, he was in his comfort zone, but now he's being thrown into a seat that has not only completely crushed Liam Lawson, but also Perez, Albon and Gasly. Being the exception to drivers as talented as those guys I just mentioned will be unbelievably difficult. But as I said at the start of the video, I really want to see him succeed, because he's been waiting for this moment. He's worked a lot on himself since 2021, where he was a lot more volatile. As a rookie, it was to be expected, but he definitely wasn't ready to be in a top team back then. Right now though, he's a different person. He's a lot more mature and level-headed, but still maintains that inner passion that makes him such a fiery character. Especially to start the season, he's really harnessed that desire to prove people wrong to his advantage. Combined with Liam's severe underperformance, Yuki's consistency in challenging F1's frontrunners was very influential in this decision. But what happens if we get to Suzuka and Liam outqualifies him? What happens if Tsunoda isn't an upgrade to Lawson and the driver in the second seat is still struggling massively? Well, the simple answer to that question is just wait for like half a season. This might be an unpopular opinion, but I think this is the best possible thing that could have happened to Liam. This year's VCARB is a very solid car, and even though the strategists mess up every single race somehow, at least we'll see an improvement for him in qualifying. He's also not so much in the limelight anymore, Although, I won't lie, it would be funny to see Hadjar posterize him into early retirement. But anyway, this could very well be his saving grace since he doesn't have to deal with an undrivable car. Fast nonetheless, but requires a driver with a lot more confidence, experience, and ultimately natural talent to get the most out of. But then, on the other hand, a lot of people would argue that he wasn't given a fair amount of time for one reason or another, which I also do agree with. For instance, the most successful driver in the history of the sport needs a few races to get used to a new car. So, shouldn't everyone be given that same courtesy? Sainz is considered to be a very adaptable driver, but even he has struggled to get accustomed to the Williams and is currently getting stomped on by Albon. Does that mean he should be immediately dropped? No. So why Red Bull are so quick to play fast and loose with their drivers doesn't make any sense. While yes, they do have the best driver academy on the grid and recruit a lot of talent into the sport, it means nothing if you're going to burn them as soon as they drive for your team. I'm a bit conflicted because what they've done is clearly good for Lawson's career, but this entire mess could have been avoided if they had just hired Tsunoda from the beginning. I just hope he doesn't suffer the same fate, or at the very least, isn't as badly off as the drivers who came before him. But looking at recent history, it's hard not to think about the possibility of him falling at the same hurdles. And what I'm most worried about is the team not protecting him from the media onslaught that will come if he doesn't perform. They put Liam in this horrible position where he was given a seat at the expense of a driver who was more deserving of it. And when Checo was struggling in 2023, Helmut Marko crawled out of his dingy ass corner and said to the media, Checo's problems in qualifying were because he's South American and his head isn't as fully focused as Vettel or Verstappen. When I'm pretty sure last I checked, Mexico is in North America, but that's besides the point. Such ignorant, xenophobic comments should have never seen the light of day, and it's crazy how quiet Red Bull remained about the whole thing. If he was comfortable stereotyping Perez in front of the whole world, can you imagine the things he was saying about him behind closed doors? I just hope Yuki isn't subjected to the same level of prejudice, but I guess we'll wait and see. Coming back to the topic of whether Liam can go into the V-Carb and straight away outperform Yuki in a Red Bull, I think there's a relatively high chance of that happening. And no, it's not because the V-Carb is faster than the Red Bull, but because it's easier to get close to its performance limit. Verstappen said after the Chinese Grand Prix that the V-Carb is easier to drive than the Red Bull, and that he expects Lawson to return to his full potential there. And I agree with him. If a car is mediocre in terms of speed, but more driver friendly, then almost anyone on the grid can unlock its ultimate pace. However, if a car is very quick, but needs a driver that can handle a very nervous rear, it's difficult to perform well. Because even though the car has a lot more theoretical pace, the sheer confidence loss a driver has when they seemingly don't do anything wrong, but the car just feels like it's all over the shop, is massive. And once you do lose that confidence, you might as well say goodbye to any good qualifying sessions, because that's where you need to be pushing the car to its absolute limit. A bad qualifying then turns into drastic changes being made to the car going into the race, and the driver struggling even more, or not being able to make up many positions due to dirty air and whatnot. With the pack closer than ever in 2025, it will be a lot more difficult to make up positions in the race if the second driver has a poor quali. So it's going to be crucial for Tsunoda to get this right from the jump, or at the very least show bigger strides in progress of getting closer to Verstappen than Lawson ever did. Because comparing these guys to someone like Checo, who joined Max at the start of this regulation period, would be a bit unfair. Since over time, car development has moved in a direction closer to what Verstappen wants, which is why we saw the Mexican initially start his seasons brilliantly. But then over time, the gap between him and Verstappen only grew larger and larger, particularly on tracks with a lot of high-speed corners, like the middle sector in Spa. That's where Max used to dunk crazy amounts of lap time over Checo, simply because he was more at one with the car. If you're unsure whether the rear of your car is going to snap and bite you while plowing through a high-speed corner, then of course you're going to be a lot more cautious as a driver, and as a result, much slower. Despite Yuki being more experienced than Lawson, if he doesn't feel comfortable in the car from the beginning, then it's going to be a long stretch of races. Who knows whether he'll even last till the end of the season. Knowing Red Bull, they might just throw in Isaac Hadjar, and then Iwasa, and then Arvid Lindblad, and then Amna Al-Kubaisi, Helmut Marko, Jos Verstappen, or the situation becomes so dire that they have to wait for Max Verstappen Jr. to rock up and say, fine, I'll do it myself. I can't help but feel also that if Yuki makes it to the end of the season, he'll be dumped by Red Bull anyway. Because unless he's a Verstappen regen and is instantly going band for band with him, they'll have no reason to keep him on, since Honda will no longer be supplying their engines. Having said that, there's no guarantee that Max will even stay after 2025 if he can't challenge for the title, and he is genuinely their last hope. Red Bull have completely boxed themselves in because they've pinned the entire success of the organization on this one driver who could very quickly decide to up and leave to take his talents elsewhere. And then instead of addressing the problem of making the car more drivable, they just cycle through driver after driver, hoping they'll pick everything up within 5 seconds. Makes it even worse when said driver has only competed in 11 races prior to that. Max in fact has been saying the car is the problem, and it's crazy how Christian Horner doesn't take his own advice. Verstappen has been adamant that the Red Bull needs better drivability and he didn't necessarily want them to drop Checo. He also liked a post by Guido van der Garde that defended Lawson, and how he was given an unreasonable amount of time to meet unrealistic expectations. These guys are right. Lawson is a talented driver, and it's unfair to expect him to perform well if you don't give him time to settle in. But anyway, as I said, the drivers aren't the problem. It doesn't help also when historically, the second Red Bull driver has only been there to play a supporting role to their teammate and never challenge them. But I digress. Choosing Japan as Yuki's first race for the team was no coincidence either. In fact, it's the only bit of positive PR they have at the moment, because their driver management has been atrocious. Hopefully he can do well and win on debut at his home race, but realistically, making it out of Q1 is going to be an accomplishment. And if they keep him to the end of the year, hopefully he'll have a drive in 2026. Maybe Cadillac or somewhere else, I don't know. I would just hate to see Yuki's reputation get destroyed after all these years of building it. I hope you all enjoyed. Let me know whether you think Yuki is ready for Red Bull down in the comment section below. Please like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you're new to get my latest videos in the future. And as always, I'll see you in the next one.